Hey team, I'm Maddie. Welcome to Science Side Up. I have the Dapper dinosaur with me here this evening, and we're going to talk about some drama on weather Twitter, and I'm very excited about it.
Now, I gotta say, until I think 2 days ago, I didn't really know that weather Twitter was a thing, but I shouldn't really be surprised because blank Twitter is always a thing.
It's always a thing.
So yeah.
Weather Twitter is a lot of, one, if you're a meteorologist, like people share very cool graphs and data. It's very fun to look at. So that's a great reason to follow weather Twitter. Second is like, there's always some hot takes about storm chasers on weather Twitter. Like people out amateur storm chasing just like to get a cool picture. And as you can imagine, I'm sure that those groups of folks often do things that are very unsafe, and can, whereas for like people who are chasing storms or chasing tornadoes for research purposes, like safety is a huge deal. But if there's some people out in the field doing dangerous things because they're looking for a cool photo, right? So anyway, there's always like fighting about storm chasing stuff on weather Twitter, sharing of forecasts, blah, blah, blah. And so naturally, so this is with Hurricane Ida is what we are talking about this evening. Before we get into that, I'm sure most people here know who you are, but do you want to say hi, Dapper?
Hi, Dapper. I'm the Dapper dinosaur. I very rarely stream with Maddie, except sometimes 3 days in a row.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, that's not true. I stream with you pretty often, actually.
Yeah.
Let's see. I have a channel. It's Dapper Dino. I do mostly science, pseudoscience debunking, stuff like that. 2 to 3 videos a week. So if you subscribe, I can almost guarantee you I've now somewhere around like 14 or 15 months straight of at least 2 videos a week. So
wow, you have a way better record than me. But yeah, so guys, Dapper's channel is linked in the description. So you can go check out. We did a stream together on his channel last night, debunking some Matt Powell stuff. We were just reacting to a Matt Powell sermon. I'm not even sure we got to science. I yelled at him a lot.
We got to a little bit of like basic philosophy, and that was about it. And we got through about 10 minutes or so over the course of 2 hours.
Yeah. Which for me, for responding to a Matt Powell video, is actually pretty darn good. And, if I do say so myself. So, okay. So as many of y'all know, here, let me just pull this sucker up. I can show you the current path of what's left of Hurricane Ida. If I do this button.
Does it go into New Jersey?
Yeah. So I'm guessing. So Dan was going to be here to help me co-host tonight, but he's dealing with some tornadoes tonight. And over on the East Coast, they don't know what to do with tornadoes. So
that's not entirely true. When I lived in Massachusetts, we actually had pretty good tornado preparedness, despite the fact that we almost never had tornadoes.
Okay, but when I lived in Massachusetts, there was exactly one tornado in the 4 years I was there. It was an EF1, right? And it was over the summer. I was interning at this company, and it was hitting a town that was like seriously 90 miles away. And it's so please picture like 20-year-old Maddie in a room full of the next youngest person is like 40 and everyone else is a guy, right? So 20-year-old Maddie is sitting there completely calm because I'm like, it's an EF1, like wind speed is the estimation there. And it's like, it was something like 90 miles away. And I was like, I'm 0% worried. But they were like, no, we have to all go home now. People were like calling their wives. It was chaos. And hey, I
would rather an abundance of caution than loss of life through, brushing aside real threats. Totally abundance of caution fair. Is the better option.
Totally fair. Also, hi, Caleb watching. He says hello. So
hey, Caleb.
Team. Yeah, and after my last live stream, 3 separate people went to my Buy Me a Coffee and bought me some coffee. So I'm actually really excited about that. And so I don't know if they wanted that to be anonymous or not, but thank you so much to all those folks. And so what I am doing, I don't know if I've told you about this, Dapper. There's another series that I really want to do on my channel, which would be profiles of scientists throughout history that did really, really cool stuff, but you probably haven't heard of them.
I think you only told me about that 5 or 6 times.
Oh, only because I'm only 5 or 6 times excited about it.
Okay.
So what I am like using my Buy Me a Coffee fund for is I'm kind of like saving up, because to do that, I really need to be able to like hire a script writer and do some stuff. So that's right now, that's what that like Buy Me a Coffee fund is going for. I want to be able to like make some of these more time intensive, more labor intensive, and like historic profile videos of very cool scientists throughout history. So
okay,
anyway.
But Maddie, that's a sacred trust to use that money for coffee.
That's true.
Be careful about violating this sacred promise that you've made to your fans to buy coffee.
I see. So, but also what I'm doing is like, this frees up the money I have otherwise budgeted in my account for coffee. Does that work?
Because of the fungibility of money?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that works.
Okay. Anyway, so that's what I'm doing with that. But okay, we were talking about Hurricane Ida. So this is the current track. It's now, so you can tell that it's a tropical depression, because if we're looking at it on the National Hurricane Center's like forecast, do you see there that the center, which is that like black circle with a D in it, the D means that this is a tropical depression.
Got it.
So that's downgraded. That means its sustained wind speed is, I think it's less than 50 miles an hour. I possibly should know that off the top of my head of the different qualifications for wind, because tropical depression versus storm versus categories of hurricane, it's all determined by the sustained wind speed. So yeah, there we go. Tropical depression, my sustained winds are less than 40 miles an hour, less than 39 miles an hour. So it's calmed down quite a bit. And by the end of the week should be out over the ocean.
Okay.
So, okay. Yeah, so a little bit more about Hurricane Ida. So it made landfall down, in New Orleans, as a Category 4. That's 4 out of 5. So that's like, not as strong as Katrina, but is the same strength as like Hurricane Harvey. And a Category 4 and 5, those are like major hurricanes. And something that's important to know about hurricanes is, so that sustained wind speed doesn't, okay, so we categorize them by their sustained wind speed, but that doesn't actually tell you about the thing of a hurricane that does the most damage and is the most dangerous.
Seems like a silly way to categorize them then.
Maybe. But, people don't ask me this stuff. So do you know what the most dangerous part of a hurricane is?
Well, I mean, I would have said the wind gusts.
Okay.
Because, I mean, if you have a sustained wind speed that you can withstand, okay, fine. But then if you have a much stronger gust, that might blow something over that otherwise would have been fine.
Yeah, so that'll definitely do like some catastrophic damage. But the thing that like does the most property damage and claims the most lives is the flooding.
Okay.
Right? And so flooding is more related to like amount of rainfall. And then it's also related to the strength of the low pressure that's at the center of a hurricane.
Because of the swell.
Yeah. Brain bug, got it. Floodwaters. Absolutely. Floodwaters are the most dangerous.
Brain bug has me beat when it comes to weather.
That's okay. We're all here to learn. And so the sustained wind speeds are, what can happen with a hurricane throughout its lifetime? This is just going to be a stream of me geeking out about hurricanes, I think.
That's okay.
Okay. So what can happen with a hurricane is, the strongest sustained winds are in the eye wall, right? So those like really fast winds right around the eye of the storm. But sometimes that eye wall can kind of like break and dissipate. It's sort of like it's so fast and so strong, it like can't keep going. So that can happen sometimes. But even if that eye wall like breaks, then you can have the same low pressure center, right?
Mhm.
So the same potential for like damage from flooding and sort of that's a better measure of the overall strength of the storm. But because that eye wall kind of like dissipated a bit, you don't have the same the same really strong sustained winds. Sometimes the eye wall reforms and it would like go back up a category, but that's something that can be kind of deceptive is when those winds can go down without the storm weakening at all.
Okay.
And Caleb mentioned also related to the speed of the storm. So that also matters for in terms of damage. So how fast the storm moves. This happened with Hurricane Harvey a few years ago in Houston. Hurricane Harvey was incredibly slow moving. So when it got over Houston, it kind of just stayed put. And instead of spreading, think of it as like, it's basically a bag of water that's dripping, right?
Wait, is it an ugly bag of mostly water?
It's an ugly bag of mostly water, sure.
Star Trek reference.
Star Trek reference, yes. So it's an ugly, yeah. So if you think of a hurricane as like a bag of water, it's going to dump all of that water throughout its lifetime. Well, if it moves fast, then a lot of places will get a little bit of water. But if it moves slowly, then one place will get a lot of water. So that also tells us a lot about like just the speed of the storm. So the same two storms in terms of like sustained wind speed could have remarkably different effects on the human population depending on how fast they're moving, like how much water they've got in that, stuff like that. So anyway, but I did bring up some statistics for us. I think it's so far in Louisiana, there's about 1 million people without power, which is certainly an emergency situation.
Yikes.
There. It's done $15 billion of property damage.
Do we have any damage reports from DAL?
From
Dinosaur Adventureland?
Dinosaur Adventureland. No, I don't think it hit in Dinosaur Adventureland.
Shucks.
I know. And so far there have been 6 deaths attributed to the storm, which is obviously tragic. Because
it's tragic, but I also think that compared to just not that long ago, I would have expected a lot more. And like, I think a lot of that's probably due to, people doing your job.
Yeah. So I did bring up some other numbers for comparison. Hurricane Harvey, which was one of the deadliest storms of recent memory, claimed the lives of 68 people, and Hurricane Katrina claimed the lives of over 1,000.
Wow. So yeah 6. I mean, 6. That is tragic, but my goodness, it's an improvement.
Yeah. So when the mission of the National Weather Service is preservation of life and property, right? 6 deaths is 6 too many. And we're working to get those numbers down.
Right. 0 is always the goal.
0 is always the goal. And it's an improvement from, say, Hurricane Harvey, which was also a Category 4. So I think that's maybe a better comparison. Hurricane Katrina was a Cat 5, and it broke the levees. Like, it damaged infrastructure. There's a lot more problems. So all of this introduction is to try to give you, Dapper, I so appreciate you being here, by the way, because I need someone to like remind me. I'm at the point in my PhD education where I don't know what a normal human knows about weather, right?
I feel that way about a lot of things, and I'll just say something I'm like, oh, you don't just know about that? And people are like, no. I'm like, oh, okay, never mind. I'll go walk away now.
Yeah, like, oh, I'm so sorry. I thought everyone knew this because this is my entire life, right?
Right.
And, just like on kind of the more like human side of things, several of my friends from the Weather Center who are graduate students or in like a postdoc position, they like saddled up, they drove radar trucks out to Louisiana. They were sampling it, they were like I got several tweets and texts of like, well, been awake for 30 hours straight monitoring the radar, and now it's gone past us and I can take a nap. So
12-hour nap.
Yeah. So there's been, and the other thing that happens when they drive these trucks out, right, is they'll often they will find a good location for their radar, but often the roads around them get flooded out. So they get kind of stuck with the radar for a couple days. So, they're like loading up on Triscuit and beef jerky.
Yeah.
And so, a lot of, and they're doing that, right? They're not strictly putting themselves in harm's way. They're very safe. But, you know,
Actually reminds me of
voluntarily,
a blizzard I had to sit through. But sorry, go ahead.
but voluntarily, you know, going out to one, provide forecast support, right? So that we can try to help protect people, right? To gather data, to be able to improve forecasts, to be able to better predict things, to keep more people safe, you know. And none of these guys, it's not as if they're getting hazard pay for, like, they're on a graduate student stipend and they're living off beef jerky and Triscuits for a week, right?
Yum.
I
That's a lot of
know.
salt. I hope they drink a lot of water to balance that out.
I think they just drink a lot of coffee.
Ooh, that's a
I
recipe for a disaster right there. I
Right,
knew
like I worry for all their kidneys, but
yeah. I
yeah,
knew a guy in the Navy who had a similar diet, and he just passed out one day while he was trying to take the watch. He just
straight up
fell.
fainted.
Yep. He actually came really close to falling onto a sharp metal corner, but he
Mm,
did not. He went right between it. But yeah, don't look, guys. Take care of yourselves. Drink water.
yeah.
Don't just. I mean, fair. Drink coffee, but don't just drink coffee. Balance it out.
Yeah, right. Look at me. I'm being such a good kid and drinking water right now.
I'm not.
Well, you're a dinosaur. I don't know dinosaurs' dietary needs.
Most dinosaurs have to drink water.
Mm, okay, fair. So that's what's going on with Hurricane Ida. This is like how seriously, right, weather people take and forecasting something like a hurricane is such a big deal, right? Because it affects so many people. You know, the weather community works incredibly hard to make accurate forecasts, to put out good and accurate information. And that brings us to Tulane University. So on here we go. When was this? 2 days ago. This was about 12 hours, I think, before Ida made landfall. Tulane, like their official university Twitter, puts out this statement that Ida's path deviated from what forecasters had predicted as recently as yesterday morning. However, we are confident that we have taken every precaution and that we will weather this storm as we have others in the past. Please visit their emergency site for more information. So, Dapper, do you know what my problem is with this tweet? Do you see it?
From what I understand, there was in fact no deviation.
Yep.
And that instead, Tulane University has just decided to basically cast doubt on the entire profession of meteorology for no reason.
Yeah. So that's the second two sentences are fine. Like, if the first sentence of this tweet had been like, we're continuing to monitor forecast and we are confident that blah, 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 right? Like that would have been fine. But that first sentence is such a problem. One, because it's so incredibly dismissive and disrespectful of like the literal hundreds of scientists, right? Who are have worked like their lives, are dedicating their careers to forecasting hurricanes.
And who did it correctly.
Right, and do it correctly. And two, Tulane is wrong, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to show you what then Weather Twitter immediately replied to this, right? But what they were referring to is the location of the center of the eye. This is, mind you, a storm that is hundreds of miles across, right?
Right.
It's huge. Where the center was going to fall from one forecast to the next moved by 20 miles.
It's like nothing.
That's like the margin of error, right? So like Tulane, my guys, whoever is watching these forecasts, if you think the eye shifting by the size of your campus, right, is going to make a difference in what your students are going to experience, then you clearly have no concept of emergency management or how hurricanes work, which is baffling because you're in New Orleans, right?
Yeah, of all the places that you would want to have a pretty good hurricane management sort of policy.
Yeah, exactly. And so one, like, this is disrespectful, but the thing that's also, it's disrespectful, it's incorrect, But the other problem that is the real reason that like I'm worked up about it, whether Twitter got worked up about it, is this is a respected institution, right? And what they have done here is eroded public trust in forecasts in emergency situations. Right.
Which already is not super high from what I understand.
It's already not super high because everyone's favorite joke is, be a meteorologist. You never have to be right at your job, right? I don't know what to do with that, right? But like, when you're in a situation which is like a storm that can kill people, right? Is heading my way. Who do I go to? Who do I trust to tell me how to keep myself and my family safe?
Hopefully not at Tulane.
Hopefully not at Tulane. But when, a trusted, respected institution like this puts a tweet out that's like, well, you can't trust the National Hurricane Center, is what they said. That's what the like plain reading is going to be of this. Now, maybe I could imagine that like maybe whoever at Tulane. So I've ranted and raved before about like how for-profit forecasting companies tend to exaggerate and always predict the like worst case scenario of forecast, not the most likely scenario, which is also a problem. So, yeah. I mean, if whoever's Tulane's emergency management was not getting their forecast from like the National Hurricane Center, if they were getting it from some for-profit company, then I could actually see maybe the hurricane trajectory changed by more if you're only reporting the worst case scenario, which is always an outlier, right? So yeah, the outliers are going to shift, but that's why I think it's irresponsible to show the spaghetti plots of all the possible paths of the hurricane to the general public, because it takes a lot of knowledge to be able to accurately interpret that plot.
Yeah.
Okay.
I almost certainly couldn't do it even if someone held my hand through it.
And I have to say, like, I can barely do it because I don't directly study tropical meteorology. So I know, for example, like this center's forecast tends to be better over like the Northern Europe Arctic region, right? So I kind of know that. But I don't know those incredibly fine details for tropical storms, Okay, so let's read some of whether Twitter's sassy replies.
Good.
Because that's what I'm here for. Okay, so we get just the Schitt's Creek meme. Well, that's absolutely not true. I appreciate that. Alternative NOAA. There's like Alternative NOAA is a great one, and Podunk National Weather Service is a great Twitter account. So this is the historic path of the hurricane. So this was from Thursday, what day was Thursday?
I like Jennifer Cordio said, I have a Sharpie if you need to move the cone.
I can't even express how mad that make me. So Thursday was the 26th. This is a solid 3 days before Tulane's like tweet here, right? The 3 days before has the center going right over New Orleans. Right.
And 20 miles at that scale is nothing.
Right. At this scale, this is nothing. This is, again, this is a storm that is the size of Louisiana, right? In the scale of the entire state, 20 miles is nothing.
In other words, it's sort of like, there's an elephant charging at you. It's like, but you're 3 inches off from where he's likely to hit you. And it's like, okay, that's...
Yeah, basically, exactly.
That doesn't comfort me any.
So the last time, about this Sharpie comment, the last time Weather Twitter got this sassy was when our, former glorious leader drew a Sharpie with a Sharpie onto one of these weather forecasts, which is in fact a felony, if you were wondering. But
is the statute of limitations out on that?
Probably.
Must be very short then.
Maybe it's not, but like, I got really mad about that one too.
I feel like that's one of the less prosecuted felonies.
Probably. Intentionally altering a like National Weather Service product is in fact like a felony, which anyway, because it is a matter of public safety.
Right. So wait a minute. Is there like national weather stuff that I could like get as like, oh, like there's a flyer or something, and if I then modified that, would I have committed a felony?
I don't think so. I think it's like a forecast is what you're not allowed to. Like,
because I was going to say that might be very restrictive. Like if they had a map of the U.S. and I took it home and then I marked out where I'd been. Handcuffs.
Oh, no. Handcuffs. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. This is one of the early. So this is just a lot of people replying with like the old tracks that shows Tulane smack dab in the middle of the cone, right? Days before. Do
they not know that the cone itself is like the likely locations for the center of the storm?
Maybe. So
maybe they don't.
Maybe they don't, but this could be like extreme. But like, I'm assuming that whoever is in charge of emergency management at a university in New Orleans on the Gulf Coast, that it would be so irresponsible if that person is not passingly familiar with how hurricanes work.
I mean, look, this is the country where there was a serious suggestion to nuke a hurricane, so nothing will surprise me anymore.
That's fair.
I'm out of surprises.
Ooh, this is blatantly false and easily proven false. I can only conclude that Tulane University failed to make adequate preparations for the hurricane and doesn't have any staff with the professionalism to own up to miscalculating. Oh,
yikes.
These get sassy. Ooh, we get shaming. Yeah,
shaming for bad safety is I'm okay with this. There's a lot of things I'm not okay with shaming. Endangering the lives of others is not one of those things.
Right.
You should be shamed for that.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, Scott Duke. Welcome to the stream. I was going to say chat, both, I guess. I don't know. What are words?
And Scott, yes, Tulane is the university in tonight's topic. The first hurricane watches and warnings to go up on the Gulf Coast were for your area. Also, in every forecast track, you were just east of the skinny track line, which is the like most confident this is where the hurricane will go.
Right.
The average statistical error 48 hours out is 40 to 60 miles. And this one was like, oh, the forecast missed by about 15 miles. Like I said, I thought it was I've heard as much as 25 and as little as 15.
But either way, well within our statistical confidence.
Right. And just so you know, so there are things about hurricanes that are really hard to forecast. But believe it or not, location isn't really one of them. Like the strength of the storm when it gets there is a lot harder to forecast than where it's going to go. So and then like the exact timing of when it's going to hit, that's harder to forecast.
Right.
But where it's going to go, like that is pretty spot on. Especially when you're going. So my guys, team, if you guys live in a hurricane prone area or if you're interested in a hurricane, please just go to nhc.gov. That's nationalhurricanecenter.gov. And that's where I get this cone. This is the easiest to read and like historically most accurate picture of where it's going to go. There are other forecasts that are more detailed, but think about it kind of like the more detailed it is, the more places it can fail, right? So this sucker especially for public communication and safety, this is old reliable, right? Just go to nhc.noaa.gov. If we go like to their homepage, you can click on everything that any tropical disturbance, so cyclone, hurricane, depression, even if it's just this is a thing that might one day, that aspires to be a hurricane one day, it may or may not.
Actually, I was about to ask, what are the so I'm seeing X's, circled X's, and I don't know, a shuriken.
Okay. Yeah, so can you see, is that in the StreamYards?
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, now I see, yeah. So post-tropical cyclone or remnants, okay.
Yeah, so
the X is, the chance of forming. Okay.
So this is a tropical disturbance, and this one in particular, disturbances get numbers. You have to actually become a tropical storm to get a name.
Okay.
So disturbance 1 here has a 10% chance of becoming a cyclone in 48 hours. So this isn't even this isn't a cyclone. It's not a storm. It's just a thing that could become a storm.
Right. What do I have to do to get a hurricane named after me?
The hurricane name lists are generated every year, every other year. So yeah, periodically, and they're random, except they exclude names of previous hurricanes that had a major impact. So there will never be another Hurricane Katrina. But if we see Kate out here, right? So Kate went full tropical storm, but now is dying off, and it did all of that over the open ocean.
Okay, so we can see another Kate.
We can see another Kate. And then Larry I would be shocked and amazed if Larry lived to make it to land, right? He's got to travel a really long ways. I bet Larry's just going to kind of swoop up like that.
Just die around the same place as Kate, huh?
Yeah. So actually we can, and if you click on Larry, then it'll take you to his cone of uncertainty.
Ah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not anywhere near any significant land. Okay.
And so by the way, emergency manager at Tulane, if you're watching this ever, this is where you should go to get your information. Anyway, just here for the ratio on this extremely bad take. I like it. I like it. You should be apologizing to the folks at National Hurricane Center and NOAA and the National Weather Service for this tweet. I like the comment section. I would also like to point out, I like this. Are you insane? What forecasters missed the forecast? Certainly not the ones at the National Hurricane Center. And another thing one thing I was saying earlier before I got distracted by the sass, is that one of the things that's hard to forecast is, say, when a hurricane strengthens, or at exactly what strength it'll be when it makes landfall. But this hurricane, it was record setting how accurate the forecast was, right? Okay. For this, because the hurricane strengthened immensely right before it made landfall. And that was accurately captured in the forecast, which is amazing. And I don't mean amazing as I can't believe we pulled that off. I mean amazing in that's awesome how good the science is and how much we understand hurricanes, right? And it looks like a few new people have joined, including Ian Sager, who would like to know what was the tweet. So let me reread the Tulane tweet. So the tweet we're responding to is this. It's Tulane saying, Ida's path deviated from what forecasters had predicted as recently as yesterday morning. And we don't care about the rest of it, because that sentence is a blatant lie that is incredibly disrespectful and dismissive of forecasters doing lots of hard work. And also is problematic because it makes people think that they can't trust forecasts when, oh my God, especially when it's like the most resources for improving forecasts go into things that could possibly kill you, right? So there's a reason that like we're maybe you think we're like better, like you didn't get it right that it didn't stop raining when you said it would at my house, right? We put more resources into being able to forecast high impact events than we do like knowing exactly when a Sunday sprinkle is going to stop, right?
Imagine that, trying to save
Imagine
lives
that
instead of their picnics.
Yeah. Given the size and intensity of the storm discussed on multiple forecasts, it was obvious that Tulane was in the path of a major hurricane. Yep. Here we go. I saw this picture.
Oh.
That made me yeah.
Yeah, that's accurate, but rough.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Oh, I like this. And here I was thinking about what an incredibly accurate forecast the Hurricane Center put out last week when the storm was near the Cayman Islands. Right. This hurricane. So, in general, for hurricane stuff, 3 days out is incredibly accurate. For that, in that like 5 days out, 3 to 5 days out, it's like pretty accurate, pretty reliable, pretty consistent, right? And then, but like this guy was forecasted incredibly well for like I think that 5 day was incredibly well, and by pretty consistent, you'll see the cone of uncertainty gets wider, but the path is like it's always in the cone, right? You know that
right. I feel like people don't always understand what the cone means. Right.
The cone is like it's going to be somewhere in here, and as we get closer, we can narrow the cone.
Yeah.
Right. Now I understand if you're like an organization like Tulane with like you have so many people there, you don't. I certainly understand not wanting to put out an evacuation order, like prematurely, right? Or you know, there's because a huge reason that people like don't evacuate is often the economic hardship of evacuation. So you really only want to put out a you really only I'm sorry, I got so distracted by chat and then I completely lost my chain of thought.
You don't want to put out probably like exaggerated forecasts, which get people to evacuate unnecessarily.
Right, exactly. And you don't need to like an evacuation is like that's a huge deal, right? That's not something you want to order if it's unnecessary. And sorry to Ian in the chat, I see you. I think you missed the bit where we were talking about this. So the change in the forecast was by less than 20 miles. Right? Like it wasn't, will it hit Tulane or will it not? Like, no. It was the center shifted a hundreds of mile across storm. The center shifted by less than 20 miles, which is like, it's nothing. And it certainly doesn't affect, it's not going to significantly affect impacts, you know? So anyway, so what my point was being that like, I understand, so if you see 5 days out, there's a hurricane that's forecasted to like hit us. It's forecasted to be, you know, we don't know what its strength is going to be when it hits us, right? And so let's be like very weather conscious, keep our eyes on things, and make sure this would be a great time to bust out your like emergency management plan. Excuse me, you know, make sure people like know what to do. It like start making preparations for an evacuation, right? Do everything you can do up to actually like pulling that trigger of yes, let's evacuate, you know, because if you don't have to, that shouldn't be a hugely strenuous thing to like, oh, okay, we can unmake those preparations. That's not a huge deal.
Right.
But if you had 5 days warning that a major hurricane was going to hit you, right? And again, you should know, if you know anything about hurricane forecasts, that sorry, I'm laughing at there's a for whatever reason that little shift was a major talking point down here. And on the news in between neighbors, but you aren't climatologists, and meteorologists. So I think there's definitely responsibility on whoever is communicating forecasts to you all. Like, honestly, like a 20-mile shift shouldn't have made the local news.
Yeah, no, it's like, oh, is the eye going to be over your house or my friend's house?
Right.
Like, that's it. Like, it's which neighborhood is going to get the exact eye of the storm, and it's like,
exactly.
Who cares? It's
really that doesn't matter. So that doesn't matter. So I think that, to me, this speaks to a larger problem of I really think that in weather, especially in emergency things like this, there's a breakdown in communication, right? Yeah. Of between, and I'm not trying to throw shade on any local broadcasters or local news people, because they're absolutely the boots on the ground people that are communicating. They know their audiences, right? They're an incredibly important resource. So, my mind immediately goes to so what education and training do we need for local broadcasters for, because meteorology has 3 arms, right? There is a pure research arm, which is really what I do. There's an operations arm, and then there's a broadcast arm. Operations guys are the ones doing the dirty work, getting the data to make these forecasts, making these forecast products, and making those products available to the broadcast community. And then it's the broadcast community's responsibility to communicate that information effectively to the public. So I feel like there's a bit of a breakdown in the communication between operations and broadcast. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, because it seems like it would have had to be the broadcasters who were like, oh, and now the storm has shifted 20 miles. Because seems like no one else is making a big deal out of that, because it's not a big deal.
Right. And so certainly no one in the research and everybody in the research community and in the operations community is like, oh my God, we hit this forecast out of the park, right? The shift was it was marginal. It wasn't noticeable at all. Look at how amazing we did, because it only shifted 20 miles. And we also got it 20 miles more accurate, right? But it sounds like, and actually, so Ian, I super appreciate your perspective here, because this is I don't just want to be sassy. I want to learn. I want other people to learn. But it seems like what ended up communicated to the public was, no, Ian, that intensification was the best forecast intensification we've ever had. There's actually even a USA Today article on how well the intensification was forecasted. So again, there's clearly a breakdown of communication. And Caleb, you're absolutely right. This exists for every science-based platform. And I appreciate you saying that I'm doing my part to fix it. That's why I have a YouTube channel, right? Because one of the things I am good at is I think I'm good at communicating science to a variety of audiences.
And humility. And humility.
I'm so humble. Oh my God. And this is a really big problem in my mind, because it doesn't matter how good the science is if we can't get the people it affects to use it,
I'm sure that doesn't affect any kind of medical ongoing situation at all.
So my sister's visiting right now. So actually this stream is, I'm going to try to keep it close to an hour because I want to go hang out with my sister. But my sister's a pediatrician. I was trying to tell her what the stream was going to be about, and I was complaining about like communication, and she was like, yeah, Maddie, that's not a thing I can relate to or understand at all as a pediatrician. I'm like, oh, sorry,
Yeah.
sister. Love you, mean it. You're amazing.
Yeah, and it always seems like it's the most important things that where there's some kind of problem. Like if science is having trouble communicating like how far away like a distant galaxy is, I'm just like, well, I wish they weren't, but like whatever. But no, it's where these big problems are like, hey, do this thing or you will probably die. And people are like, really though? And then they die, and it's just like there's got to be some kind of a solution to more effectively communicate all these life-saving bits of information.
Right. Well, and I will say that like I have a friend, she just got her PhD. There's actually an interview with her. Her and her husband both defended their PhDs in meteorology within a month of each other during the Troubles.
Interesting.
And so we talked about like defending a PhD virtually and all of that. But so her name's Kenzie. And Kenzie, her research in meteorology is the social science of it, right? Or at least that's what she's working in now, of the social science of how do we better communicate forecasts. She's more focused on tornado forecasts because tornadoes are harder because like the gold standard for a heads up for what we can give the public for a tornado is 20 minutes, right?
Gee.
The best you can hope for is in 20 minutes a tornado is going to hit your house, right?
It's not time to leave and run away. That's time to like get to the basement, hopefully.
Exactly. Well, and that's why if you're in the path of a tornado, do not evacuate, right? You need to have a plan and go to a basement or cellar are the safest. Otherwise, an interior room of a home. The worst place to be is going to be in a car or in like a mobile home. Those are very dangerous. And so again, emergency preparedness for different types of weather. I
like Caleb's last chat.
You like what? Sorry.
Caleb's most recent chat in the side chat. It says communication, our generation's Harry Seldon crisis. It might be. I mean,
okay, yeah. I'm so sorry. I don't know what that is.
Oh, you haven't read Foundation?
No.
Well, that's an Isaac Asimov book series, and Harry Seldon is a central figure, even though he spends almost the entire series dead. But he invents this branch of mathematics called psychohistory, in which he can predict the long-term, large-scale societal changes on a galaxy-wide scale. He can't predict like what some guy is going to have for lunch on a Tuesday 300 years from now, but he can predict like, hey, this particular empire is only going to last 400 more years and it will collapse, and then 3 different factions will rise up, whatever. And at various different points throughout the books, there are these crises that happen where it's sort of a pivot point.
Okay.
It's not clear what's going to happen, but if it goes this way, then we'll continue on the path that Seldon laid out, which is going to get us out of the galactic dark ages as soon as possible.
Okay.
And if it doesn't go that way, well, we're going to have a big setback. And also, I think Apple TV is producing a relatively high budget Foundation TV show. Okay.
Very cool. I do like Asimov's writing. Most of what I've read is like the way he explains physics, because I think it's just elegant and beautiful. But I need to read his sci-fi.
Positrons.
What's up?
Then he has a weird thing with positrons, because in his sci-fi, he's like, robots have positronic brains.
And yeah.
Like, okay, so their brains are powered by essentially anti-electrons. What is it?
How does that help? What is that? Okay, cool.
Sure. Whatever, buddy.
Okay.
And then, of course, Data had one as a reference to Isaac Asimov.
Yeah.
That is a sharp turn. Why is there a sharp turn on that? Why does it look more like a leg and less like a hurricane cone?
This guy?
Yeah.
This is...
Oh,
I
it's
think
from 2009.
this is a joke. Yeah.
Oh.
Because
Oh, okay.
because we reuse the name.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So here's more of a spaghetti plot, but that's not a true spaghetti plot because these
It's
are
really narrow.
really tight. Yeah. Okay. So another thing that's a little fun. I'm sad we haven't gotten to this. I saw some of these tweets. But so Tulane University their football team is playing my university, Oklahoma OU, this Saturday. So there was a lot of the OU, and so everybody knows, like, the National Weather Center, its headquarters is on my campus, right? My office is in their building. Because we like share it. It's a shared space, federal space and university space.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot of people who live in Norman and are huge supporters of OU football who were following this. And this devolved into, yeah, well, our football team can beat up your football team and our nerds are better, right? It got very silly.
You got the best jocks and the best nerds.
Best jocks and the best nerds. For higher education, you should hold yourself to a much higher standard than this.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Don't denigrate the work of working scientists when they didn't get it wrong. Like, that's the thing. If it actually had been a bad forecast, like if you'd been like, oh, the hurricane was predicted to miss us by 200 miles, but then it turns out we're going to get dead center, then I'm like, yeah, okay, that's fair to call out that as a bad forecast.
Yeah.
But like 20 miles is just nothing.
20 miles is just nothing. Okay, so I want to pull up, this is the article, like I said, it was in USA Today. So Hurricane Ida's strength may have seemed surprising, but not to forecasters, because this was the first thing I found that addressed because it did strengthen a lot, and that might have caught some people by surprise. But again, I don't think that really, Ida exploded in intensity before landfall, going from 85 miles an hour to 150 in just 20 hours. And I'm pretty sure that, the accuracy of the forecast National Hurricane Center was spot on and the best possible under limits of science. That was the National Hurricane Center was explicitly calling for rapid intensification right from the time of the storm formation, and had Ida pegged as a Category 4 about 36 hours prior to landfall. So our boots on the ground in the side chat talking about like how they were sort of caught off guard by the intensification. Again, oh, please don't tell that to the meteorologists. You'll make them so sad. You'll make weather Twitter so sad. Because they're like, no. That's the hardest part of the forecast. And we got it right. Like in that 3 days before, and I'm sure, I used to live in South Carolina, right? I have sat there watching forecasts as like hurricanes were coming in and like watching that intensification go up and just be like, oh my goodness. Right. So that had to feel really like overwhelming and like scary if you're there in New Orleans. Like absolutely. And I'm not saying that is a crazy intensification and that's like a scary thing for a storm to do. And it was forecasted 3 days in advance, right? Accurately to a Cat 4 3 days in advance. And like that could be, so I'm thinking of like how a forecast would probably go in terms of, so uncertainty gets less and less the closer we get to the event, right? So I can imagine that in earlier forecasts, it's probably going to intensify, right? But we might not know by how much, but like they're nailing that Cat 4 3 days ahead. And this is, okay, so Colorado State University of Colorado State has they have a very good meteorology program. Because there's another National Research Center for Weather, and NCAR is in Colorado, so they do a lot of good research there. Anywho, so okay. What else do we need to talk about with this?
I'm not sure. I think the takeaway though is, hey, don't go, fuel dangerous disregard for life-saving science on Twitter, especially if you're the official Twitter handle of a institution of higher learning.
Yeah. I do super appreciate this guy shooting his shot as like, if you pay me, I will do this better. Oh, hey, all right, sorry. I know this guy. Here, I was hoping we would find this. This is every hurricane forecast for Ida, including the strength. So you see that, like, when it's making landfall, we're seeing it in that 3 to 4 in like every single forecast.
Right. And if you're in New Orleans, like, none of those is a significant deviation.
Right. Again, for a storm that is the size of the entire state, how much it shifts, like how much the eye shifts when that's shifting by order of magnitude 10, right? That's not going to change how it affects you.
Yeah.
Okay. I actually really like this sass. Tulane has a storied and well-deserved reputation for excellence in academic fields it offers. Looking at this post, I'm guessing meteorology is not one of them.
That makes me wonder, do they actually have a meteorology department? And if so, what would they have to say about this?
Let's find out. Let's do Tulane University, and let's just look through what degrees Tulane offers.
If they do have meteorology, then, like, my goodness, for shame. Unironic, for shame.
Unironic. All right, let's just do majors and minors. What do we got? Okay.
We've got someone who definitely looks like she's not a model posing, and is definitely a real student in the actual sciences.
She's doing science with this wooden box with a crank. Sure.
The thing that bugs me is it's like the either inappropriately used PPE or PPE for no reason to make things look sciencey. Mm-hmm. There's one ad that I see every once in a while, and there's this woman holding a soldering iron and wearing, like, glasses and whatnot. But the thing is, she's touching the metal part of the soldering iron that would be burning her hands if she were actually using it.
Oh,
and no one who actually has ever soldered would ever hold a soldering iron that way. She's holding it like a pencil, right? Like,
and I also say that, like, if you ever got close to a soldering iron that was turned on, you would know not to touch that. Mm-hmm. So we don't have atmospheric science, right? That's not, because that would be here. So that's do.
Yes, I'm sure that as a university, Tulane is better than Liberty U.
Yeah, absolutely. But okay, environmental earth science. Oh no.
Maybe.
Okay, well, environmental science, like the Venn diagrams overlap, but they're not a circle for like meteorology or atmospheric science. So meteorology and atmospheric science are the same thing.
Right. You can get a French major.
You could.
I imagine that in New Orleans they have a pretty good French program.
Why would you, if you are in Louisiana, why would you not have a meteorology program? Why would you not be like, we would like no meteorology? No, wait, we are not to the MEs. Nope, no meteorology.
Maybe other schools are covering it.
Maybe. Anyway.
Well, there you go. They don't have a meteorology department, which maybe they should.
Maybe they should.
Maybe they should just hire a meteorologist.
Hey, team, I'm going to be looking for a job in like 2 years. I'd love to come work for you.
Well, and the other thing is, you don't even have to have like an on-campus full-time meteorologist. You can just have someone who was like, hey, when there's an emergency, we'll toss you some bucks and you can tell us what the heck's going on.
Yeah. Like, I would love to do that for you, Tulane. I would love to do it.
that seems like one of the easiest things you could do as a university to keep your students safe in such a hurricane prone area,
Mm-hmm.
and even just such a flooding prone area, right?
Yeah.
Like large swaths of the city are just are essentially underwater if not for levees and dikes and whatnot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
So far my favorite class to teach at OU, and I don't get to teach it this semester, and that's fine. But I love to teach severe and unusual weather. And I want to tell you about my exam 2 for that class.
okay.
So I break that class into like different sections where like we're just talking about like one type of weather. And section 2 is all about hurricanes, right? So we spend like a month and we talk about nothing but hurricanes. How do they form? How do they dissipate? What are going to be the most dangerous areas? What's the like intersection with emergency management and stuff like that? And then for their test, I have like a fake state that I've drawn a map for, right?
Okay.
And I provide them with like I make a fake hurricane with forecasts. Silver, this is my longhorns are pointing down. No. Longhorns pointing down. Anyway, so and then I make like a fake hurricane with forecasts, but it all kind of looks like the products you could get from the National Hurricane Center, but distinct so as to not be confused with real forecasts. Anyway,
right.
And then I make them pretend to be like the governor, and I like, okay, maybe actually what might be more interesting if next time I get to teach this class, maybe I should make them be a university, like you're an emergency manager for a university, right? You're in charge
somewhere near the Gulf Coast, maybe.
Somewhere near the Gulf Coast in this state I made up. Like
Louisiana.
Yeah. Talk to me about what preparations you're going to make, what decisions you're going to make, and justify them with science, right? Okay. And that's what I do instead of a test, right? And I don't know, I got a really positive reception because that's severe and unusual weather is for non-meteorology majors. It's a science elective. And so like I get a lot of like journalism majors and like education majors and even like engineers or people that are going to do like aviation and like the guys that are in the tower that tell you when and where you get
air traffic control.
Thank you. Air traffic control guys. And so I try to put them in situations. So I try to make the class like relevant to them. They at least pretended to really like it. I hope they actually enjoyed it. I'm sure they preferred it to an actual test.
Well, I'll say this. I don't remember, this is an undergrad course.
Yeah.
I don't remember ever pretending to be enthusiastic about an undergrad course.
Yeah.
Ever. If I was enthusiastic about it, it was, now, am I an outlier? Maybe. But I don't remember ever like faking enthusiasm for a course I didn't like. In fact, I remember one of my courses where the professor was like, so I don't take attendance. And as long as you pass the tests, that's the entirety of your grade, unless you're disruptive. So if you don't want to come, just make sure you do well in the tests. And I was like, all right, I'm out. And I never showed up again because all the tests were online.
I encourage students to come to class because, especially for like a gen ed, right, a basic science elective, I don't think I get much. I don't think I'm entitled to much of my students' time, right? It's like in my mind, like, okay, this is a 3-hour class, right? A 3-credit class. I'm entitled to approximately 3 hours of your time a week, maybe 4. And so what I try to do is like I'm not going to take attendance. You guys are all adults. I understand things come up, right? And usually it's like 80 to 100 students in this class. So like I'm not going to keep track of all of you. That sounds terrible. But right, if you come to class, right, then you should have to do approximately 0 outside of it.
Yeah, that's fair.
Is the way. So I try to make it beneficial to come to class. So I try to make coming to class like, if you show up to class, you will learn everything you need to for this class in these 3 hours that I have you in the same room.
Well, I got to be honest. The class that I skipped out like that on,
yeah,
it was like biology 1 for non-STEM field majors. So it was like a major part of one of the tests was like name 5 organelles of the
Oh
cell.
gosh.
Yeah, it was basically like, hey, do you remember high school biology? You do? Well, congratulations.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, so for this, like, I have a particular philosophy for gen eds, right? My philosophy for gen eds is like, if you show up and try, you should get an A or a B, right?
Yeah, that seems reasonable.
Two, this should never be the thing in your life that causes you stress, right? My class that is not for your major should never be a source of stress.
Right. That's fair.
And three, this is probably the last science class any of these guys will like ever take, right? I want it to be a positive experience, and I want, beyond learning specific like facts about the weather, I want them to take away some of the like thought processes that scientists go through, you know, that kind of like logical problem solving. And I want them to like understand the complexity of bringing it all the way back, right? This was a long train of thought of things like a hurricane forecast and why it's important to go to the experts.
And why it apparently shouldn't be your college safety team, which it should be, but apparently
or whoever
not.
runs your Twitter account. Jeez.
Right. My goodness.
Anyway, the moral of the story is the National Hurricane Center has got your back. Listen to them.
Crazy.
Yeah. Okay, I think let's go. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. Like I said, my sister's visiting, so I'm going to go hang out with her, even though I love all of you that show up on Wednesday nights for me to get, you know, sassy about people not understanding science. And Dapper, thank you so much for coming on tonight. I really appreciate having a co-host for this stream, because this was one where I was like, I don't know what other people know.
Right. Well, I don't know that I'm a good proxy for that, but I'm probably a better proxy than just no one.
You're a better proxy than the void.
Right.
But anyway, so I super appreciate it. So is there anything you want to shill?
I mean, I've got a video premiering tomorrow at 5 p.m. Pacific, which is, I guess, 8 Eastern. And if you're in Central or Mountain, you can figure it out. If you're in like Europe or Australia or something, I don't know, man. It's a bad time for you, because everything I do is at a bad time for you. It's gonna be about an hour. So if you decide to come for the premiere, get some popcorn ready, maybe pour yourself like a nice cold beverage. Doesn't have to be alcohol, but it could be, I guess. And yeah, settle in, because it'll be, you know, just under an hour, I think. I'm currently in the process of animating 2 different videos. So one of them is the video in which I have some proto feathers, because we met a fundraising goal for proto feathers. So I have a video in proto feathers, and Twitter and YouTube both voted. Voted for bright display feathers. So I'm going to basically be a parrot.
Mm-hmm. I'm so excited for that. And I will, as soon as we get your bright display feathers going, I'm going to push the rumor that your girlfriend goes to another school.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
Although actually, I have display colors on my avatar normally. That's the reason there's yellow and blue on the head.
So you already have a girlfriend. She just goes to a different school.
Well, I went with the assumption that's just a general male cat like thing, because, you know, a lot of species in general, and especially dinosaurs, have just year-round colorful males.
Okay.
So.
Well, awesome. And guys, if you're somehow not subbed to Dapper, his channel is linked in the description. Definitely go check that out. From me, tomorrow you will see released the next Weather 101 video, and then there's another one ready for Sunday. So those are going to be conditional and convective stability of the atmosphere, and then Sunday's video is on wind shear. And then if you can see my I've been filming, right? There's my tripod there. So
Nice.
IPCC report video is should be coming out in the next week or so. So that'll be good. It's a longer one, but or at least longer than my Weather 101. I've been trying to keep very, very tight.
Yeah, I've noticed those tend to be like under 10.
Yeah, I try to keep them at 5 minutes. That's a educational learning strategy. How long can people pay attention thing? So I try to keep those.
Unfortunately, YouTube doesn't like them.
YouTube doesn't like that, but it is easier to learn from them, which is my main goal.
Fair enough. It sucks that YouTube is like, no. If you want people to learn effectively, you're not going to get ahead.
Right.
Thanks, YouTube.
Thanks, YouTube. Love it. Well, that's one of the reasons that I do live streams is because they're super fun, but also it gets that, like, it's that yummy, yummy YouTube engagement.
Yeah. You're not wrong.
I'm not wrong. All right. Well, I'm going to let you guys go. Thank you so much for hanging out. And I will see you guys in a week or so. Bye, team.
Bye.